All right, everyone, welcome to the November 4th meeting of the Southborough Historical Commission. It is 7:06 p.m. and I'll call the meeting to order, noting that besides myself, Kevin Miller, we have Vice Chair Annie Pfaff, Michelle Hokinson, and Grant Farrington in attendance. Grant is temporarily off camera, but will be on shortly, we hope. And unable to join us tonight are members Jim Bloschke, Dan Blanchard, and Kelly O'Brien. So the first thing I've got on the agenda tonight is just a quick chair's report, because there are a number of issues that I wanted to update everybody on. First of all, with regard to the 21 Highland Future Use Committee, there was I would call it a get-together on October 2nd, but we didn't have quorum. That it unfortunately, got to the site and it didn't work out. But then we did officially meet with a quorum on October 28th. And just FYI, that committee now consists of Albina Filippo, the at-large rep, Destin Heilman at-large rep as well. They both live very close to 21 Highland, and Destin is the president of the Southborough Open Land Foundation, so has some interest, obviously, in the space down there. Freddie Gillespie from Open Space, who was elected chair. Lisa Braccio from the Planning Board, who was elected vice chair. Kristen LaVault, representing the Recreation Commission, and of course me from Historical. So there were 6 of us. And I have hopes that good things will come out of that. This initial meeting was just preliminary discussion, by and large, some scheduling. We hope to have John Parent come speak to us at our next meeting, and it was just more general strategy. There's also that committee was supposed to form initially almost a year ago, but through all kinds of different reasons, mostly having to do with getting enough bodies there and getting them sworn in and whatnot, it obviously hasn't met now until end of October. And so one of the things we'll be asking for from the select board forthwith is an extension of our charge, which is supposed to expire at the end of the year, and that clearly we're not going to have anything to report by that point. So there is some movement, and I just wanted to let you know that finally we're underway over there. Regarding the CPC application for the Rural Cemetery Water Tower restoration, and I have also a note about the plaque installation. The plaque, which, as you recall, we labored over in wording and research and whatnot, and which was paid for with ARPA funds, $504, was delivered, as I think I noted at our last meeting, and then it was installed at the end of September. One day, actually, Grant sent me a picture and said, "Hey, have you seen this up?" And I hadn't at that point. So the sign is up, is on the door. It looks absolutely spectacular. I think I've got, actually, I've got if you want to see it, I can give you a quick screen share. Michelle, you walk over there. You've probably seen it. And why can I not see? Oh, there we go. Sorry. Hang on. I will share my desktop and try to bring this up real quick. So there it is on the tower. And there's a close-up of it. Now, Chris didn't install the rosettes on it because, of course, we're anticipating restoration of those doors in fairly short order. But it looks great. It tells the story. It does exactly what we want. These other photos that you can see here, these are the photos that I showed to the Community Preservation Committee when I appeared before them on October 23rd. And of course, Grant, as our rep on CPC, was there. I talked about the fact that, the mortar of this building is in pretty good shape, but there are 4 of those slatted windows And those have some deterioration, a couple of broken panes and stuff. There's a missing sill. That's the southern exposure. There's a missing sill. You can see how terrible, what terrible shape the roof is in. Um, that's another view from the south, but showing also the east face with the door. And so there are four of those windows that needs some restoration. Um, this area that you see with the stone work around it instead of a planting bed features that. And there was some question, CPC submitted to me a list of questions they had. And one of them was about potential funding through cemetery trust fund resources. And there was a specific reference to this Newell Leary Trust Fund. And that actually only pertains to the family plot and apparently to this area just adjacent to the tower, but not to the tower itself. So I cleared that up. That shows you some of the damage on one of the windows that needs to be repaired. That one's got some cuts and the sills, needs refinishing. And then that's looking up under the roof, where actually the roof structure seems in fairly good shape, but that's missing mortar where my cursor is. That's obviously would allow, rodents, bats, whatever to get in there. So there's some work that needs to be done, but Bill Cundiff, the DPW superintendent, and I are still fairly confident that we're about for the roof, windows, wood, some light mortar, and the doors at about 20,000. So on that meeting of the 23rd, Mr. Cundiff was present remotely, and I was there in person. And we actually, Grant can attest to this. We were in front of the CPC committee for quite some time, sort of explaining the situation. They had other presenters that night on various subjects. But in the main, I thought it went quite well. They're obviously, they were receptive and supportive. One thing that came up is that, they were asking about cemetery trust funds. And I had talked to Sam Stivers about this. And his view of the matter was that because the water tower now serves as a historic artifact, and it's very beautiful and pleasing aesthetically, but is not integral to the operational needs of the cemetery because it's not used for its original purpose, which was, for irrigation. And he notes that, there's only about $1 million in that trust fund that throws off, reliably, let's say $40,000 a year. And they've got some very pressing needs over there, including a retaining wall adjacent to the reservoir. He, quite frankly, he felt that CPC should pay for it, basically. I conveyed that view to CPC. Of course, CPC's view is that the Cemetery Trust Fund should partly pay for it. So I'm in a difficult position where I'm going to attempt to negotiate some sort of conversation on the subject. I said, for instance, the chair's opinion, that would be Ben Smith on CPC, was that since the Cemetery Trust Fund is responsible for aesthetics in the cemetery, plantings, greenery, and whatnot, and this is part of the aesthetics, it should be part of what they pay for. And again, Sam's original viewpoint, and he was clear to me that he wasn't representing the views of the Cemetery Trust Fund because there's 3 people on that board, but only his own views. Because it wasn't operational, it should be CPC. So I'm going to try to, going forward, navigate that question as best I can. The other thing that came up with regard to funding was both for the rural cemetery water tower proposal and I see your hand, Grant, I'll get to you in just 1 second, and for the fencing was and Grant, you're here. No, you're here 2 ways. I think maybe that's the issue. Let me try to move you back in. Okay. So we got two Grant Farringtons. Now we have one. Okay. Okay, Grant. So
Sorry about that. I was transferring between phone and computer.
yeah, that's okay. So the question that came up, besides the availability of cemetery trust funds, which is an open question. And again, I think I just quickly gave you what the differing views were on that subject. The other thing that came up from the CPC folks regarding funding was questions about the Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund, which I know Grant is familiar with, and Annie probably is as well, and Michelle maybe a little bit, is that this is a 50% reimbursable matching grant program administered by the state through Mass Historical. And, they asked both myself and Andrew Dennington, who did the majority of the talking with regard to the fence proposal, which of course we co-sponsor. What about that money? And, my view of it is that that's difficult. It's very competitive. It's a long cycle. It doesn't happen until late in the spring. The CPC folks indicated that they could make a kind of contingent funding. In other words, if you got Mass Preservation Projects Fund money, CPC could, for instance, in the $20,000 ask for the water tower, they could endorse the whole thing. But if the Mass Preservation Project funding money came in, that could be backed out of what CPC would have to spend. And, I said, my view of it is that makes sense. It's difficult. One thing I pointed out, and this is kind of for a larger conversation for the select board, is that we don't have access to a staff grant writer. We don't have a staff person. CPC has a staff person. Some other boards and committees have staff people. We don't. So, and I said, frankly, I know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And one thing I'm not good at, because I have no experience at it, is writing grants. So I would be looking for some help in that regard if we have to go that route. Either from a town employee or internally on this group, because I can't do it alone. I'm a little swamped. So stay tuned on that, and maybe we'll swing back around it. But ultimately, and again, Grant can chime in any time on this. I thought that CPC was very supportive of the water tower idea, and frankly, I don't know what CPC funding would be for, or CPA funding would be for, if not for the restoration of a town asset like this one that's 121 years old. And so smack dab in the center of the National Register District. And so conveys such a rich and sort of vital part of Southborough history, both in terms of the cemetery, both in terms of Depression era recovery, and when it was decommissioned, and the history of municipal services and water in this town. It's a huge kind of fascinating story. So I'm optimistic for support, and CPC was very hospitable. The other thing that I was there for, I came up and sat with Andrew Dennington while he did the majority of the presentation on the fencing restoration. And again, I would characterize CPC as quite supportive on that. They're very pleased with the quality of the application that was put together jointly by Bill Cundiff, DPW head, and of course Andrew Dennington is vice chair of select board. So that also went really well. Let's see. I'm running through my chair's report, and Grant, maybe when we get to CPC, you can sort of give your view on any of this stuff. The next thing I had was, I will also say, by the way, in terms of the grant sort of stuff and the idea of Mass Preservation Projects Fund funding, and CPC was sort of advocating applications for both the tower and the fence. That, in an ideal world would defray what would have to come out of the CPC coffers in Southborough to get these projects done. One sort of cautionary tale on that was the fact that Southborough, the town applied for a one-stop grant, and that cycle just ended and the awards were announced. And that was for wayfinding in the center, because of course there's this desire to have the history walk and all that stuff, the kind of stuff I've been talking about with Michael Wison at the Historical Society for a couple of years now. And now at Historical, we're not directly involved in that, although I lent some support in the preparation of that grant. It was put together by Leah Emerson, of course, who is their EDC, development coordinator. I think that's her official title. Their grant writer, with Vanessa Hale at the townhouse. So that was Vanessa and Leah Emerson's baby. But I did supply them with some information, and they used some of our photos of the National Register signs and whatnot. But they didn't get the money. And I did reach out, or Leah reached out to me and gave me the results, and I let her know that we would be supportive if they want to go back and try again next year, because it is important to us. And I thank them for their efforts, but it gives you some insight into how difficult, in fact, those grants are to get. So I hope my friends over at CPC will keep that in mind. Okay, a D on Chair's report is the stone walls at Main Street and Corderville Road. This is something that has just emerged in the past week. I was contacted by Mr. Cundiff, again, DPW and superintendent, with regard to his concerns about stone walls, and they're big stone walls. If you're familiar, this is the corner of Main Street and Corderville Road on the south side of that intersection, both east and west. On the east side of the intersection, this is the stone wall that runs all the way around the property that contains the community house. And on the west side of the intersection, it's the stone wall that runs around the outside of the town-owned house that's that is at 1 Corderville Road. So, and these are stone walls that vary in height, but they function because of the regrading of that main Corderville Marlborough Road intersection, where the elevations change quite a bit. They're very substantial walls, and they function as retaining walls. They hold back a tremendous amount of soil and sidewalk and everything else. Long story, and this was all done during the Main Street reconstruction project, of 20 what? Well, I wasn't here for some of it, but I know it went on forever. It was sort of coming to conclusion in 2019, 2020, and I think into 21. In any event, those walls were built in that period, I believe in 2019, and they were badly, badly done, very poorly done. They're falling apart. And there's a very long story involved in this about disputes over what was promised and what was delivered, and whether they were constructed to a high enough standard. They're falling apart right now. They suffer badly from water infiltration and freeze and thaw cycles, and they're basically blowing apart, especially the top foot or so. These are walls that on the inside are mortar reinforced, and the mortar is visible. On the street side, the attempt was to make them appear as if they were dry stack. And so the mortar they don't run the mortar all the way out. In other words, there's mortar in the core and mortar on the inside visible, but not on the street-facing side. The stones are very small. There's a disagreement about what color they should have been, what type of stone. and so on and so on. It's complicated. So Mr. Cundiff reached out to me asking me what I knew about it. And I said, well, this was before my time. And frankly, there are no records on this. And he said, well, his understanding was that the concerns about this had been initially voiced by our former chair, Michael Wison, and asked me if I would reach out. And I suggested, I think as well, that I reach out to the folks at the South Row Village Society, who of course run the community house. And he thought that was a great idea. And so I did. And that was last Wednesday. I reached out both to Michael Wison to see what he knew and what his opinion was. Because Mr. Cundiff knew that Michael had previously lodged an objection with the state over this. And I also reached out actually to Michelle would know this because Michelle's husband, Ray, sits on the board of the Village Society. So I reached out to Ray and asked him to convey the query to his colleagues of what they thought about the stone wall and what they were looking for, what they wanted. The Village Society people have discussed it internally. And I was privy to that because I was CC'd in those emails. And so I know I had a sense of what they thought and what they wanted, and I've conveyed that to Mr. Cundiff. And Michael Wison wanted to walk the site in person, so I met him there on Wednesday afternoon, and we went through it, and he wrote up his opinion, and he sent it to Mr. Cundiff and Ms. Cook, the select board, and I think Mr. Dennington as well. So they have all the information. The proposed solution from the state, just so you know, was to cap the walls to provide better protection at the top, and they gave two options, either concrete or granite. Well, I think the consensus among everybody who's looked at this is that concrete is not going to fly. Now the question of whether the granite will do it or not remains open. There's further information that's needed. This is important to us, and Michael Wison's initial objections had to do, and his continued objections have to do with what he regards as historical accuracy. He indicated that he felt there had been a promise of native stone, and this stone appears to be from elsewhere, and so on. We're at the point where we don't have enough information yet. I have really high confidence, however, both in select board leadership and in DPW leadership, that this is going to get done, and get done in a way that makes that wall safe and viable. It might not, for instance, most of that stone is rather light, more of like a buff colored stone rather than the kind of dark granite that you would see at the rural cemetery. That was a point of contention for Michael Wison. I don't know what stone will ultimately be there, but I'm very confident, and I feel good. And this is, I think we've got a good relationship going among other folks with DPW, which I'm very happy about, because I can't stress the importance or understate the importance of Historical's relationship with DPW. Much of what we want to get done has got to go through DPW. And so, I will say, I think that Bill and I have a very good relationship, and can get things done together. And I don't know what the resolution of this particular wall thing will be, but I know that he knows that it needs to get done. And certainly so does Ms. Cook. So I feel good that it will get done, but that's about all there is to say at the moment. And that's probably too much, but Michelle, go ahead.
Yes, I mean, I don't think that this has anything to do with the Historic Commission, but on the subject of the walls for the Main Street project, they had built the wall at 9 Main Street and it was over height, so it was obstructing the intersection.
Right.
So we had voiced our concern about that because there's been several accidents there over time. And the company actually came back and took off the top part of the wall, but never finished it. So that is definitely, I don't know if that could be joined with this effort, but
It should
again,
be.
it's not a historic property.
It should be, Michelle, and I will bring it to Bill's attention. Of course, he wasn't around for this, so he might not be aware of it. I know that the planning
No.
board was very
Yeah.
involved and vocal on that subject.
Is that at the corner of School Street? Is that that
Yeah.
house?
Yeah, school in Maine.
Yep.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah. So, it's
it's
good.
9
Good.
9 Main Street.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I take all this to be good news because it's good communication. It's everybody trying to say, this was a problem. It was a COVID baby in a certain way, something that was happening when people weren't around, couldn't get out, didn't want to meet, all that kind of stuff. And under a previous regime, and so now I think there's a good team, frankly, looking to get things fixed. So we'll stay tuned. But again, because it concerned historical in the first place, and Michael was very clear that historical, through him, was very vocal on the subject. He has obviously a sense of, I don't know, a connection to this project and concern about it. And I'm in a way, in terms of information, playing catch up. I don't have the raft of emails on this subject that I can trace back, and so I'm trying to do my best to help Mr. Cundiff get the information he needs to move forward and get the state to act, because the goal of this is to have it cost the town, in an ideal world, nothing. And in maybe something that might be closer to reality, at least a minimal amount of money. So onward. Good news again on a similar front. The James W. Burke sign is a sign that commemorates a small portion of the common near the All Wars Memorial to the young man who was the first enlistee from Southborough in World War I and the first casualty. He actually died of disease, actually in Nova Scotia, but while a member of the Canadian Expeditionary Force. And his grave in the Rural Cemetery is tended every year by the Canadian government. So that sign had been mislaid during this Main Street sidewalk project. And I'm happy to report that DPW at last has found it, and that it's in very good shape, and that they intend to reinstall in fairly short order, I hope. So still to be accounted for are the common street signs, which remain MIA, a boundary stone, which was on the other side of the street, and what am I forgetting? That may be it. So we're still, again, Bill knows about this stuff. I know about it. We're working on it. I'm going to reach out to the contractor next to really try to, chase these things down. Fortunately, it's all well documented. We have photos. So that may help, even if it turned out to be a recreation kind of situation. Onward, historic house sign installations and donations. This is some really great news. I ended up, go ahead, Grant.
Oh, sorry. Just on the previous one, for the common street sign, do we know if I just haven't looked in a while, but is the wrong street sign still up?
Yes. And
My
again,
father's doing so much. Is there any way that we can remove the wrong sign even though we can't put up the right sign? I mean, it's just
Yeah.
not St. Mark's Street, so I would
Yeah,
just like to
I
see it
talked
removed.
very recently about this with Bill, and he knows, and it's just we'll
Like,
get to it. The
I think it'd be
discussion,
better to have no sign than to have the wrong sign, personally.
I agree. The discussion that we have gotten somewhat sidetracked from because there other concerns have come up. But what we had been talking about was the question of, and I don't have the acronym at my fingertips, but there was some discussion about whether the signs would conform to current standards of visibility, which they would not. And my question was, well, would they be the restoration of those common street signs be grandfathered in? And I did remark somewhat wryly that I don't think anyone really depends on those for navigation, given that it's hard to get lost on Common Street since it, just a little arc from it's like getting lost in your own driveway kind of thing. But so until we get that part of it settled, I think that's what's hanging fire. Like Bill doesn't want to get a new Common Street sign made for the one that's currently wrong if we're going to go back and actually find those cast iron Common Street signs, and if we're allowed to put them back up, which is what I'm agitating for.
Yeah, I'd like to see that about as well. I just, yeah.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I can hear you biting your tongue from cross town. We'll get there. We'll get there. Historic house sign installations and donations. Great news on this because they've been flying out of here. And I don't want to tread on Annie's good news on the donation front. So maybe I'll just keep my mouth shut on that aspect of it for the moment. But let us just say that donations are coming in. The signs are going up. There have been 9 or 10 that have gone out in the last month or so. 147 Wood Street, 1 Chestnut Hill Road, 1 Main Street, Fayetteville Hall, 8 Main, 15 Lyman. Annie, did you get that one out to?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
22 Main, and I will say that the reaction from people has been just so sweet. People like are donating, are really happy, love them, and I will very quickly share with you the fact that we've actually had we're getting these photos. This is the one that's now this is 1 Main Street, the Bannister House. That's the oldest house in downtown Southborough, which is the Knights of Columbus. And, those are the folks that were so kind to let us put the National Register sign on their property just to the right of this photo.
Kevin,
Go ahead,
I'm
Annie.
just seeing a website right now. Oh, there you go. Okay. I'm seeing the Knights of Columbus now.
Yep. That's a close-up. That could be our beauty shot on the
Yeah.
website.
That on the website.
Yeah, it looks great. This is 7 Wood Street, the E. King House, that's up. Fayetteville Hall, that just went up. And I will say that when I was over at Fayetteville Hall, I got a tour. And people are going to be, they got a ways to go. They're, I'd say 90% of the way there. But when it's done, boy, oh boy, people are going to be pretty excited. And this one makes me very happy. I think I might have sent this. This is the NH Tyler house. That's also on Wood Street, and that is one of the happy homeowners. This couple were very kind, very sweet, and very delighted to get it. So it just gives you some idea of what's going on. Now, I do have, I will say the other thing is we don't have any to discuss tonight or any to approve because we're all caught up. Those 10 have gone out recently, and we have now 3 on order. And I just want to update you that the 3 on order are oh gosh, here we go. FD Newton House at 6 Winter Street, we approved last meeting. Francis D. Bigelow House at 6 Ward Road, which we approved last meeting. And I have to say, Mr. Fortin, that's the owner of that one. That's the one that we had all that work on, and was a lot of. He is so over the moon happy. I just really pleases me. And then the other one, actually, at 17 Oak Hill Road, I want to throw a thank you to the absent Kelly, because if you recall, we approved the house as Bemis House because we couldn't come up with the initial. And then about a week later, and so then and that was not the greatest, but it was the best we felt we could do. Well, about a week later, Kelly came up with an 1848 map, and this house is circa 1850, that shows that property as E. Bemis, unmistakably. She was sure, I was sure, I showed it to Annie. Annie was sure, so we made the change and just sent the thing off. So it's getting printed as E. Bemis House. And I didn't think anyone, if you want to impeach me over that, I would take it, because Annie and Kelly would have to go down with me. But it seemed like just an easy no-brainer, So those three are on order.
We should keep that map on hand for future
Right.
reference.
Yeah. Yeah, and Kelly's got it, and I now have a copy. So it's all just really good news. The only thing we have to talk about tonight, and let me again bring it up, is this. This is the existing sign at 14 Newton Street. This is, oh goodness. Help me out, Annie. Yeah, Jamie Falcone is the owner and the contact person on this house. This is the Caleb Williams house at 14 Newton Street. You see it's circa 1800. Now, this was one that Mr. Falcone had requested a replacement sign due to weathering. And if you recall, our last meeting, we discussed it. We approved it. And, Annie and I had noted, because we're trying to be good about record keeping, and, Annie's got the spreadsheet and, going and all that stuff. And I go in and add stuff to it when I need to, and so on, that we wanted to have a record of what was there, because the record keeping in the past was not very good. So I went over to photograph the sign one day, and this is what I got standing on the curb, and I didn't want to walk up unannounced on their property, so I just took it from the street, which is why the resolution isn't that great. But it was really weird looking to me, because this is a beautifully maintained house and just absolutely immaculate, but the sign looks like kind of filthy, like it's got this weird mold growth on it. But more importantly, do you see under the date? I don't know how well you can see that, where my cursor is. It's got a lot of writing. And what that writing says is that this house was dragged by horse and oxen to its current location during the building of the Sudbury Reservoir. And so I sent Mr. Falcone an email, and I said, hey, listen, just so we approved it, but just so you know, the way we're making these signs now, it's a more simplified design. It says, the name of the house. It would say the Caleb Williams house, circa 1800, and then Southborough Historical Commission at the bottom, but not with all that other text. So I said, I said to him, I can't tell, your house is beautiful. But I can't tell if that sign maybe got some kind of weird mildew on it. You might want to try cleaning it first, because what you get from us as a replacement is not going to have all that groovy text on it, basically, So I didn't hear back from him. So I called him today and chatted with him. And he said, well, no, that's not dirt. It's really flaking off. That's like
Oh.
the finish. That's like the lacquer, you know, is, and he said it won't clean. It's just, it kind of, it really is deteriorating. I said, well, I don't doubt it. I just said I couldn't really tell from the street, and I didn't want to go tromping on your lawn, you know, and on somebody's Ring doorbell, you know, taking photos of their house. It makes people nervous. So you know, and I said, you know, this is something I want to bring to the commission for a brief discussion, because I said, you know, we would be happy to replace it, but it's not going to have this text. And actually what he said to me was, well, I'm just going to have my own made because I really want that text on it.
Mhm.
And he explained to me, you know, this house is circa 1800, but I believe he said he's only the third owner. This is his childhood house. He grew up in it. It's been in the family, you know, for like a long time. And he really wants that story on his sign. So what I said was, all right, Jamie, look, I want to talk about with the commission, because on the one hand, we're trying to keep very consistent with what we're doing and have a sort of standard. On the other hand, I can appreciate why he's wedded to this text. So I said, I can't guarantee you how it's going to go. I said, maybe we can do this. Maybe we can't. Even if we can't, you know, you could probably go to where we go to get them made and get your own made. I'd kind of like to keep him in the family, so to speak. And I said to him, I don't know how many other of signs that went out under the old program have all this extra text. Yours might be the only one, because I'm not aware of any other house sign that has this. So I throw it open to you, Annie. You got your hand up first, so go ahead.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I think this is, that's a compelling story on the sign, and I would be, happy to, make this work for him kind of as an exception. Especially since it's replacing like with like.
Right.
If it was just, a new sign and they wanted something special, maybe I would be more hesitant to change our norm, but I would be in favor of trying to recreate this as close as possible, given how wedded he is to, the special story of the home circumstances.
Well, yeah, and if you think you can manage it, because you're our crack designer on this stuff, if you think you can work that out, I'm certainly supportive of it. Grant, what do you think of it?
Yeah, I agree. I see no problem with it, especially since we're replacing the sign. Obviously, this is something that a previous historical commission vetted, and I'm sure if we were to go look for it in the macros report and stuff, we'd probably find that the information is true as well. So I see no problem with doing this. Also, this was already an exception kind of because we haven't had replacement requests. So again, just replacing what's already there, I think is perfectly fine. Just as a side note, I'm not saying that we should necessarily do this, but I know a lot of other just as I go around Massachusetts, I have been kind of looking at other historical commission signs around just kind of for fun, and a lot of other ones do provide brief descriptions for particularly notable landmarks or buildings in town or something like that, talking about what it was used for, or a 1 or 2 sentence description. Obviously, we haven't done that, and I'm not saying that we should, but it's not like unheard of, I think, to have a 1 sentence description about a house. So I'm perfectly fine with this.
Right. That's true, Grant. And in that survey that I had done of those various programs, I would say, I want to say it's maybe about a third had some additional text. It does depend. I think the design that we've been using, the great argument in its favor is that it's legible from the street. I can tell you that, like, for instance, this house, 14 Newton Street sits relatively close to the street, but because this, their plaque is located at the top of the first floor, you probably have to get very close to be able to read this writing. But it's just that I understand Mr. Falcone has a very sentimental attachment clearly to the story and the history. So, but I'm glad to know that you support the idea. Michelle, how are you on this?
Yes, so I have to tell you, Kevin, I support it only in the fact that it's a replacement because we've sort of set standards. And my only question is going to be, this is not the only house that's been moved from the reservoir. So what happens when we get additional? So I'm just trying to make sure that we do this fair and equitable. And like I said, I don't have any problem because it's already an existing sign, but we just need to clarify what the standard is going to be.
Yeah, the only thing I wonder, Annie, you know how there's the little like squiggly that separates the date from the text, and then that additional text from the South Row. Are you able to replicate something like that as well, and do we know if the sign around?
Possibly. I can try, but I actually think like that part, I almost want to say we should be consistent in our new format,
And
or
omit it?
at least like the design. So I'm in favor of including like the additional text on the sign, but I think if we can keep like the design elements the same,
Right.
that I think would be ideal, but I can try to do something like that if it's critical.
Well, no, I agree with your position, and I would say maybe let's start there, and you know, if you're able to, and I obviously always appreciate it, give it a shot, and we'll send it over to Mr. Falcone and see if he's he was excited when because he thought he was going to have to go his own way, and then we kind of discussed, well, what if we did the sign the way we always do it, and you had a secondary plaque that explained that. But I'd like to keep it, since you guys are so open about it, and it is a replacement, to see if we can replace this as close as we can.
Can you just email or text me that, because I can't make it out from this
Yeah.
photo.
Yeah, I'll send it. Yeah,
Thank
I'll
you.
send it. I think I have it accurate, and he can correct me if I'm
Sure.
mistaken. But so, and Michelle, I heard about what about in the future. I personally, I think, would be liking to stick with the design standard that we have, with the only exceptions being for replacement signs that may have additional text. Because I hear what you're saying about being consistent with a design standard.
I think that that's a reasonable thing to do, just to have that in our meeting notes that, just because it's a replacement and we didn't have anything to do with this.
Right. And this is, I like this solution. I thank you all for your flexibility. So look, I'm going to move that we, and that, we, in a way, we should have caught this the first time, but like I said, it was when I went to document that and I saw this extra stuff, and then we got into this thing. But I'll move to, how are we going to do this? We've already approved it, but to direct Annie to design the Caleb Williams House sign to as closely replicate the existing sign as possible. And that will, of course, then be submitted to the homeowner. If it's acceptable to them, then we'll go into production like we've already approved.
Second.
Is that okay? Thank you. Roll call vote. Miller's aye. Annie?
Yes.
Grant?
Aye.
Michelle?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. 4-0. And I think that's it for me. Great. So let's go to members reports. Grant, you're up. CPC.
Great. Yeah, so it's been a busy month for CPC. Whenever we last met, I think we last met in September. Or sorry, historical last met in September. So since then, first, just wanted to give an update on town meeting. At the last historical meeting, I had come before you seeking your support for our citizens petition. First, wanted to thank you, thank the commission for supporting that, and it did pass. So we're very excited about that. In terms of next steps on that, my understanding is it has to be approved by the Attorney General, like most or all bylaws. And then I believe that we, as each of the relevant commissions and committees are, taking over as appointing authorities, that we'll essentially have to reappoint the member, each of the members with the new appointing authority. So just wanted to put that, I don't know when that will occur, but at some point we'll have to essentially reappoint my seat to the newly formed committee. So just wanted to give a heads up on that. Let's see. So CPC had our technical review of the each of the 6 applications, as well as now we've met with almost all of the applicants who gave us their presentations. We still have one presentation that we're waiting for. We're going to have in November on the affordable housing application, but we're well underway under the process. I think I had mentioned that in a previous meeting that 5 of the 6 applications have to do with historical preservation. So I think that's really exciting. Some definitely seem like that they have the support of the committee. I would say that the water tower, and just based on my reading of it right now, the water tower and the town common seem likely to pass the committee and head to town meeting in some form. So, but we'll see, obviously. And can't remember what else I was going to say, but yeah, I think that's it for my update.
Thank you, Grant. Jim is not here, so we'll skip that. Michelle, I'm not putting you on the spot. I don't think Pilot has done anything. Is that correct, or?
No, we have not met, and I will get in touch with Patty Burns Fiore to see where this is at, but it's been quite some time. And it was due to quorum.
Yeah, no, I understand the difficulty. Trust me. on the verge tonight. Annie, I saved the good news about donations.
Yeah, so I just give a couple updates from the treasurer perspective. So as Kevin mentioned, we've had a flurry of activity for our donation account, which is excellent. We've received 6 different donations totaling $500, which is great news. That's, half of our annual budget. So I think that's quite a success so far. And I added a column in our master sign tracking spreadsheet to include a column to note who has donated and how much, just so we have better records going forward for all of this. As Kevin kind of mentioned, we're really trying to improve our record keeping surrounding all of this. We're even linking the artwork to the sign, so historical commission iterations, and decades to come, have a file of that. So, that's kind of our, any questions on the sign program or status or artwork, we have a central source. So happy about that. We recently paid an invoice for the 3 signs that are currently in production that Kevin mentioned. With that invoice, we have now finally depleted our ARPA funds for historical signage. So I'm sure the finance office is very pleased that we've checked that box and that's behind us. And we've spent just over $100 beyond that amount on these 3 signs from our standard, typical contracted services budget for the historical commission. So we should have, after this invoice is paid, about $900 left for the year. In addition to that $500 of our donation account, if and when we need to expend those funds as well. So all good news there.
And can I chime in, Annie? I'm just so thrilled
course.
about that. And because this ARPA thing, boy, what a saga this has been. That goes back to the National Register signs and then the water tower sign and then the money for the house signs. And we cleaned it all up to the penny. Thank
It's been
you.
a long time coming.
Yeah, and boy, that feels good because we didn't ask for anything we didn't actually use and use, I think, well. And also the fact that I was so delighted that some of those donations came in above the recommended 75. There were a couple $100 donations, which is awfully sweet. And I'm oh, can I say, while I've got just the floor for 1 second too, where are they? Hang on. Annie has done up, this is,
Oh, I forgot about that.
well, you deserve a victory lap on this. Annie has made up these lovely little thank you notes with our letterhead, which I am going to send out to our donors. So I just think it's all kind of coming together a little bit. So thank you. And
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, great.
Awesome. Nice.
So the other thing about the budget is, believe it or not, it feels like we've barely kicked off, this current fiscal year. The budget process for next year is kicking off. And we have just over a month from now. The deadline is December 9th at noon to submit our budget request for next year. So, my proposal, unless anyone has other ideas, is to request the same as we have, which is $1,000, primarily for the purpose of these signs. I know we have a lot of ideas and things that we'd like to do. Hi, Jim. But I'm not feeling like this is going to be a year that makes sense to ask for more money, just with budgets going up and taxes going up and everything going up. But definitely open to hearing what anyone else has to say.
Yeah, for me, and I think I have a question that kind of relates or kind of connects the 2 points. Is I know that when we were kind of coming up with the whole idea of the donation, we were hoping that the program would be self-fund, or sorry, I'm talking about the historic house program that that it would be essentially self-funding, or at least kind of get us by somewhat. It seems like that might be coming true, at least with the donation. So for me, I know earlier in the year I had thought, okay, maybe we'd have to just request more for our budget, which has not been increased in, I think, a very long time. And I would be okay with that if we needed to for, the volume of sign requests. But if donations are covering it and we don't think it's going to be needed, then I think that would help my understanding of kind of whether or not we'd actually have to increase the request. Also, just if we do have another meeting before the 19th, I'll probably just want to think on it till the next meeting.
So it's the 9th, not the 19th.
Oh, okay.
But we look at when we set our next meeting date, we can take that into consideration.
But nothing immediately comes to mind, but I just want to think about it a bit more if we have the opportunity.
Yeah. And this email from Brian Ballantyne literally just came out 2 days ago. So
okay.
I'm not meaning to put everyone on the spot and vote on this tonight. I'm just sharing that, the process is kicking off and now's the time to be thinking about it.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks.
One thing I had about this was that, I think the goal, and it's a reasonable one, is to, again, use the donation account to build a kind of war chest, where we have funding to be able to do things that we need to do without protracted, I'll give you one example. We have that large bronze plaque for the bridge abutments on, the old Boston and Worcester, the bridge abutments on Parkerville South. You recall this, guys, that, that it's quite large, and, we've realized that it can't be, I don't know what people were thinking when they ordered this thing. It's been, it's sat in the Historical Society and flag school for years. But it can't be mounted on the stone itself. It has to be mounted on a pole, and we may need some welding modifications to the sign, or some sort of special bracket made, and a pole and a this and a that. And suddenly, that's going to cost $500. So that's the kind of thing where, in some ways, the more signs that you pay for out of your annual budget, and then receive a donation that can go into the Historical Commission donation account, it's going to help us. In other words, $1,000 is what, about 13 signs. If we give out more than that, so I mean, I hope to have a meeting possibly in the first week of December. If we can do that, maybe we could decide at that point. But I would not, given the fact that since I've been on Historical, and certainly since I've been chair, we've level funded. I would not be averse to asking for at least a modest, I'm talking rate of inflation type increase. Because in a way, I think there's I don't know, I feel like we're doing our bit, and we're actually now, with this donation account, we're doing our bit to be more self-sustaining. So, even almost as a symbolic gesture, 1,050, what, seriously, like a 5% increase would not, especially since we've taken 0.
Kevin, I just that we figure how many years it's been flat and take that times the inflation, because going in for $50 is silly, right?
Right. So yeah, and I don't feel like I don't really feel like we'd be hogs at the trough asking for that. So, but we can, defer maybe till December. Go ahead, Michelle.
So one other thing that just to keep in mind when we're talking about money, one thing that has come and gone and sort of gone by the wayside is the unmarked graves in the OBG. So I don't know, I'm not asking for money for that right now, but just something to think about, because I really feel that we still need to address that.
Michelle, absolutely, positively. And the only reason I deferred on that is because there was some in the background, which I'm not at liberty to share, some discussion about some funding that might step forward for that. It has not yet materialized. If it does, great. If it doesn't, that's exactly why I'd like to build up the war chest for something like that, because we did make a commitment to it, and I know we all believe in it. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, that's why I'd like to give it some more thought, because if, a lot can happen in a year, and, who knows what might come up. And let's just say we miss this budget cycle and we stay flat at 1,000, then you're looking at 2026, fiscal 27, right? Before you could potentially increase it. So that's a long way off. So, yeah, for me, in my experience at town meeting, especially for departments or committees that have like very minor budgets, even large like percent increases from a very small base don't really get a lot of attention. Even if we were to double it to 2,000 or something like that, which I'm not necessarily advocating that we should, but
2 years ago, Grant, at town meeting, someone looked at the percentage increase for every single budget line, and they actually held Historical as one of several from the consent agenda because we did ask for a modest increase. But because our budget is so small to begin with, it looked like a high percentage.
Hmm.
So I actually think we have to be careful about the perception, but it's very easily to explain when you look at it like, hey, we're starting at 1,000, 1,500 looks like a big increase, but it's still only $1,500.
Yeah.
So I think, we were able to explain it. One thing that I get worried about with asking for an increased budget is hoping that they don't see our donation account and say, oh, well, your budget should be going down, right? So we still have $1,000, a year, but now we're funding more of it than the town. So I really liked Kevin's talking point to that of, building up the war chest, if you will, for these special projects, special initiatives that we want to fund. So I think we just have to, keep reinforcing that, that, the funding isn't necessarily meant to make the sign program self-sufficient. It's, we still need the annual budget for that purpose specifically. Right?
And there are people that either can't or won't donate, and we made a philosophical commitment not to deny anyone a sign because they can't donate. So,
Mhm.
And there are cases where two of the signs that just went out to nonprofits. The Historical Society and the KFC. So, it's hard. We're not always going to take in exactly what we spend on those signs, but thank you for the report of the good news. It was very heartening to see pop up on the spreadsheet that money has actually come in. So, do you have anything else, Annie? Okay, thank you. So now we were at, and I'm not. We've kicked the can down the road on this several times on electing officers, and now we have this sort of a tricentennial committee thing to deal with. I'm not sure what the group wants to do on this. Obviously I would prefer to have all 7 people here when we do it, but I don't. I also don't want to just keep kicking the can down the road, and so would be prepared to move forward if there's a consensus to do that.
Kevin, did anyone put their hand up to step in?
With regard to tricentennial, we haven't really thrown that open yet. We can do that first if people would like.
I thought maybe of the folks that are missing.
Well, yeah, see, that's part of the problem with that too. I don't know what the feeling. I haven't discussed it with anybody, so I don't know what the feeling is. If the way it is right now, I mean, I don't know how people feel about their current commitments.
Jim, would you mind reminding me on your ND on Tricentennial and also Historical Commission? Like, if we don't appoint on it tonight, or recommend an appointment tonight, will there be a gap or in time on Tricentennial?
There may be. In fact, and I'm traveling as of 12th for a few weeks, so I'm not able to extend my time, unfortunately. So there might be a gap, but I don't think it's the end of the world. And, we get to I can give a quick report on it whenever you're ready. But the point is that the big hump was the launch for Tricentennial. And if there was a gap of a month or whatever between when I finish up and when they have someone back from Historical, then I think that would be understandable. Kevin, I think we could simply communicate that didn't have a quorum, didn't want to nominate members, a replacement until we had everybody able to voice their interest.
Yeah, I mean, we've got, quorum, but we could go forward, but, yeah, Kelly, Dan not here. I don't know if anybody's feeling really strongly that they want to do this one. and there's several more years involved in this, right, Jim? This is obviously to 2027.
Right.
So I know when we initially sent Jim over, the idea was that we might pass it off as a baton, you know, a
Each
year.
Each year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And to be very transparent, I think I had initially raised my hand to be next in line after Jim. For personal reasons, I'm not feeling like I can take on that additional commitment right now. So I'm sorry to kind of rescind that, but just not a good fit for my time right now.
Go ahead, Michelle.
So just one thing is after I contact Patty to find out where we're at with the pilot and see if we can muster some participation again. But if that's not going to happen, I'd be more than happy to be part of the tricentennium.
Well, that would be great. I mean, I must say, you know, Michelle, I think, you know the town really well and have obviously been involved in, you know, matters for how long have you lived in Southborough? 30 years?
31.
All right. Well,
It-
that
It
counts.
sounds like a fun, it sounds like a fun committee too, something
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Well, I know I think my dance card is full between Highland and trying to run
Popular.
historical, assuming well, we've got that next to deal with, but at the moment, I feel pretty occupied. I don't know.
Yeah,
Grant,
same here, just with CPC and work and everything. I'm feeling pretty maxed out, so that would work on my end as well.
Mm-hmm.
well, listen, I mean, I don't know how Kelly or Dan might feel. I'm perfectly prepared and happy to support Michelle, who's here and wants to do it, if you guys think it's a good idea to just go forward and get this done. I'm also happy to wait if we can get a meeting with, of course, the next time Jim won't be here. So
And when is the next meeting, Jim, for the committee?
I don't think I've had it calendared.
Okay.
If any, it's not before the 15th, I can be sure of that.
well, and we'd also have to send you to select board and they have to put you on the agenda and, you know, that whole rigmarole.
Mhm.
It'll be rubber stamp, but you know,
Send you figuratively, Michelle, you don't need to appear.
I mean, I would be willing to make a motion and support Michelle, but I don't want to jump the gun if we, you know, have sensitivity. So curious what others think, but I'd be willing to vote tonight.
I would be willing to vote tonight unless Michelle needs, a pause to just double check the pilot committee. So I think we leave it up to her.
Well, the one thing that I do feel, I had made a commitment to that committee and it sort of has fizzled out. And I just want to make sure that there is maybe not some plans to reignite that. And Jim, one other question to you is how often and what type of time commitment do you foresee this? I know that that's a big.
Well, so why don't I take 2 minutes and kind of give you a quick update?
Okay,
And that'll,
thank you.
that'll round that whole thing out. So the first year was primarily involved in researching what other towns have done, trying to determine what their budgets were, coming up with a list of activities, identifying a target list of all, not just the residents, but the businesses in town and who would go after, with the idea that it's going to be a fundraising campaign to put on this level of celebration. Long list of potential activities. You may have seen the survey that went out.
Yes.
So there's ideas in there that's all been gathered. There's I'd have to go back and look, but there's probably 70 to 100 pages of responses to that. But all of that in the beginning was just to get organized and to begin thinking about it. And to begin the other major thing was to begin town awareness. That was the other aspect of this. And so we identified Heritage Day as the launch point. There was a press release in August. There was a double wide, a 20-foot booth at Heritage Day, and we were providing some merch. We were selling T-shirts. We had brick sales, which were very successful. Even on that first appearance, I think we sold 26 bricks, with the incentive that if you bought a $300 brick, you got a free T-shirt. But even Sam Stivers came by and picked up a form, for example, when he was there at the booth with us. So the first year was really getting organized and understanding what are the things we could do. There's been the two probably most active people. I mean, the committee has been, in addition to myself, Patty Burns-Fiore, Andrew Dennington is on it. Jim Harding is new. He's a veterans rep. Ginny Martins, of course. Don Morris is the chair, and Sandy Popechepin are the current lineup of 7 people. And in addition to that, so I was going to say the two spark plugs, if you will, that have done most of the legwork and the idea creation and the promotion and slideshows and presentation for town meeting and all that, have been Patty Burns-Fiore and Ginny Martin. Ginny also heads up a fundraising subcommittee that's got people like Kate on it. I think that's 5 people in addition who are together to go out and solicit donations and support and all of that. So, and there's various sponsorships levels that have been identified. With Kevin's feedback, we didn't use prominent family, town family names in it, but as much as $100,000 contributions for Elite Circle, 50,000 for 300 Pinnacle sponsor, founder sponsor, so on and so forth, all the way down to Friends of Southport for 1,000. And then of course you've got these bricks for 300. So there's a lot of mechanics that have been sorted out, to answer your question, Michelle. And I think what happens in this second and third year is confirming the plans. There was an idea to have not just a fireworks show, but a drone show, for example. And one of the ideas that came out of the drone show is to have a music composition. We had a music composer who had been a longtime resident in the town, now living elsewhere, put forth a proposal to develop custom music that he would compose and then conduct, and depending on the scope of it, either present it live or whatever. But so there's a lot of activities around the celebration. The celebration is intended to be a year-long celebration, so not just on the July anniversary date, but pretty much a year of activities. One key thing, at least a month, all the way through 2027. And so a lot of the foundational work is in place. The ideas are there. Then there's never any shortage of new ideas, and certainly welcoming all of that. But right now, it's really just contributing with regard to the ongoing development of all this. The fundraising seems to be well in hand, so I don't think that you're going to be expected to, go knocking door to door, because that's handled by a subgroup. And the time commitments are basically 1 meeting a month, and it's a hour and a half to 2 hours. So
well, it also sounds like you have a great group of people already in place working on this, and Patty is there too. So I mean, I'm sure that now that I have no commitments except for watching dogs, that I think that this would be a great committee to be part of, to be honest with you.
Jim-
there's a strong foundation that you'd be stepping in. That's right. We did a lot of the legwork to figure it out.
Well, thank you.
Not that, well, my pleasure. Not to think that there shouldn't be new innovations as part of it, but the foundation is there.
Jim, did I hear you right that there's $100,000 fundraising tier?
Yes.
That's incredible.
Don't know if it'll
Wow.
happen.
Yeah,
The number on a page right now.
that's spectacular. Is there precedence from other tricentennial committees to getting that level of support?
I don't know. That'd be a question for Ginny as to where
Okay.
that number came from, whether it's just aspirational, which it could well be,
Yeah.
or whether it's got some foundation. We do know that some of the other town budgets that we looked at, the highest budget we identified was something like $330,000 or $340,000 of expense putting this, that town's annual or the celebration together. So most of them, if I remember right, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I think most of the budgets were anywhere from $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on up. But
Okay.
I think we're shooting big, and if we found a business
Yeah.
to sponsor to that level, then that would make a lot of things possible.
That's wonderful. And sorry for the questions. I'm very curious about this. Are all of the celebrations self-funded by the fundraising, or is there a budget that the town commits just as part of the annual budget process as well?
That was going to be a line item at town meeting. I don't believe it was actually put forth. So at the moment, it's all contribution based.
Wonderful. Okay.
But there are plans to ask for, supplements, but we were, to get the basic merchandise created, the t-shirts printed and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Was an initial round of fundraising that supported that.
Got it. Thank you.
So yeah,
So-
it's a fun committee in terms of looking forward to a great year and coming up with things that are maybe more enthusiasm based rather than review based like we do here.
Mhm.
Well, I would say that for the sake of continuity in this committee and before Michelle in her newly happily retired state starts taking on all kinds of other stuff, that we lock her into this position. I would be,
Sounds like a fun, this is definitely sounds like a fun and energetic, positive experience.
and of course, that would not necessarily preclude the members that are missing tonight from,
Mhm.
serving later. If Michelle decides
Yes.
that
Mhm.
pilot ramps up and gets busy, Michelle doesn't
Yep.
want to do pilot anymore. There are a lot of permutations in this, but
Well, Michelle, the way I was convinced to do it was I was told it was first year. And so you really only have to say, I'll do it for a year and then see. Right?
Okay, okay.
so
You sold me, Jim.
yeah, for that sake and for the
That's how they
continuity,
get you in. Only
nominate-
1 year.
I will nominate Michelle Hogan to be our
Timeshare
new rep.
exit.
Yeah. That's,
All right. Second, Kevin.
Yeah, nominating Michelle to be our new representative on the Tricentennial Committee.
Second.
Okay, I'm sorry. Excuse me, thank you. Roll call vote. Miller's aye. Annie,
Yes.
Grant,
Hi.
Jim,
Aye.
Michelle.
Do I vote on this? Yes.
Why not?
Mhm.
5-0, you're appointed or nominated. And I will, pardon me, send a notification to the select board forthwith. Okay, sorry, I gotta get this tickle out of my throat. I feel like I swallowed a chicken. So shall we go on? Can we do this? I mean, we're kicking this down the road since June. I just assume get it done. If we want to, do the elect officers, I don't know what people want to do, where Annie wants to be. Are you gonna stay, Annie?
Yeah, so my perspective on officers is I am happy to do it, but if anyone wanted to raise their hand for, treasurer, vice chair or anything, no pride of ownership on my end, would be very happy to give it up. But also happy to keep doing it if no one is in the position to raise their hand. Does that make sense?
Yep. I think you both are great vice chair and chair, and I'm happy with the way things are right now. That's just my opinion.
Because we could draft Jim in as treasurer, force him to stay. I guess that's
11 days. They will be looking for something else.
He's counting. He's
Uh,
counting
sorry,
down.
not in the cards.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Anybody on let's do one thing at a time. Let's start at chair. Anybody want to be chair? Anybody want to be vice chair besides the present occupant? Anybody want to be treasurer? So do you want to just, I'm trying to do this the most efficient way possible because I promised we'd be done soon.
Mhm.
Can I make one motion for all three offices?
I think we could.
To reappoint the current officers for another year.
I
Is that the best way to
second it.
phrase it, or do I have to say nominate Kevin Miller as chair?
I think
that-
however you want, my friend.
All right, I make a motion to nominate Kevin Miller as chair, Annie Pfaff as vice chair, and Annie Pfaff as treasurer of the Historical Commission.
I
Second,
second that.
All right, thank you. Roll call vote. Miller is aye. Annie,
Yes.
Grant,
Aye.
Jim,
aye.
Michelle,
Yes.
5-0. Thank you, folks. We'll try to be good, won't we, Annie?
You guys have done a great job.
It's all
Ah.
Kevin. Literally, it's all Kevin.
You know, I feel like I really appreciate the support, you know, because otherwise you feel lost. We've got meeting minutes of September 25th. I looked these over and sent Grant back edits, and I think, Grant, you sent out the kind of after you reviewed my suggestions and
Yep.
sent out a new. So does anyone have any edits for
They read-
those?
They read fine, Grant.
Mhm.
Thank you. I used AI
Grant.
for a good amount of them, so that was nice.
Great.
And by the way, I've asked Grant before if we could like appoint him officially, you know, secretary. I feel like Grant deserves a kind of some kind of gold crown for doing these minutes, because I tell him this every time he sends them to me, and I really hope you know how much I mean it, Grant, that I do not take it for granted, because I wouldn't do it. And you know, we have a good system worked out. Grant does them, he sends it to me, I give him a shot, send him back, you know, and but I really do appreciate it. And your reward is going to be in this life or the next. But yeah, thank you. But anyway, these are the minutes for 9/25. Does someone, I'll make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes for September 25th, 2024.
Second,
Seconded.
sorry, Michelle.
Okay, a motion made and seconded by Michelle. Roll call vote. Miller is aye. Annie,
Yes.
Grant,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Michelle,
Yes.
5-0 approved. There is no other business. So we arrive at public comment. Any public comment? Please raise your hand.
Well, not public comment, but do we need to schedule a next meeting?
We do need to schedule a next meeting, and thank you for catching me, Mr. Secretary. Yeah.
Honorary, not official.
Right. What I would propose is, you know how it gets when you get Thanksgiving, Christmas, it's like, oh, but I would propose either Monday, December 2nd or Wednesday, December 4th, because then we have a December meeting. It's well past Thanksgiving, but it's not anywhere near the holidays when everybody's melting down, including yours truly. So either of those dates work?
The second works for me. I can't do the fourth.
The fourth is better for me, but I can do the second if needed.
How about you, Michelle?
You're
Got
on
it.
mute.
Sorry, both are okay.
Well, Annie, could you greet?
I can do the second. Yeah, if
Second.
Grant can't do Wednesday, I can make the second work.
Thank you. That's great. So us four, and hopefully Dan and Kelly can do it. And Jim, by then you will be off in the wild blue yonder, I take it.
Yes,
Yeah. So again, public comment, nobody? Going once, going twice, all right? Well, you know, Jim, you may remember Dandy Don Meredith and his days on Monday Night Football. Occasionally at the end of a semester, much to the bafflement of my students, I will break into a chorus of "Turn out the lights, the party's over." And I would sing it for you now, but it'd be better after a glass of wine or so. But
Yeah.
You'd have to turn the recording off if you did that.
Yeah, I would, and then I would be in an OML kind of jackpot or something. So I can't, but I would recommend to you look up the young Willie Nelson when he's clean shaven and looks like an all-American boy
Mm.
On YouTube singing "Turn Out the Lights, the Party's Over." It
Okay.
is a very stirring and pleasant experience. But thank you so much, Jim, for your service, both on historical and on tricentennial.
Pleasure.
You will be much missed, and
Thank you,
know,
Jim.
Thanks,
Thank
Jim.
you.
and please send us a postcard from all the places that you're jetting off to these days.
Thank you. It's going to be Bath, England, and the film festival in Turin, Poland.
Ah, nice.
Ooh.
My son has
Cool.
a seminar he's giving.
I was going to say, I bet it's connected to your son. So that's awesome.
They call it a master class. So yes, a couple of family visits this time around.
Nice. Well, congratulations. And
Well, thank you. It's the song I would reference back would be "Closing Time."
Closing.
Right, closing time and turn out the lights.
You know,
And,
you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Yep.
Mhm.
right. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved. Oh, Annie's got it, and I second.
Okay. Roll call vote. Miller's aye. Jim.
I
No, you should get the last word, I think. Annie.
Yeah.
Annie.
Yes.
Go to Annie. Grant.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Jim, you should sing your something.
I
Aye. Excellent. Thank you.
it's been fun.
And good night, everyone. And God
All the
bless you.
collaboration.
Yeah. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Bye, Jim.
Good night.
You're around the
Right.
block.
Right.